Why don't we go ahead and get started? So we don't keep people too long today, but we're going to continue to have these meetings, kind of tracking what Judge Bustamante also is doing. The more we keep doing this, the more we can stay focused. So I'm Dave Goss. For those of you who may be watching for the first time or don't remember, I'm here, Chief Judge for the Court of Appeals. My court has stayed a number of cases that DCS has pending before us. Because of the ongoing issues, those issues are back before the Superior Court in Division 1, which includes 8 of the counties. Yuma, kind of across the way up to Apache and Navajo counties, Yavapai, Coconino, and other counties, Mojave. So I know judges in all those counties are working through getting this resolved. On the good side, we have had, and I'll just tell you, I believe one more case that has gotten the release. So we have 2 cases now that are through the process, and we can again move on those appeals. I know that Judge Bustamante, and I'll ask for an update so that I understand what you folks have to add to it, especially since it's been a little while since you were before her, and I think you're going to be before her tomorrow, so perhaps forecast what you're going to be filling her in on. But she has 49 cases that we've stayed here in Maricopa County. I know from my understanding, 11 of those cases were complete or near complete with the last meeting. And Judge Bustamante says status conference for tomorrow to make sure DCS is ready with the affidavits and the avowals so she can turn the case back to the trial court to resolve any motions regarding that disclosure. My understanding is there's another 38 cases that are having continuing delays, and I believe Judge Bustamante gave you folks until December 16th. And I know that is why some folks are working feverishly right now, because I do know your folks are working very hard to hit that, and that you folks had said that you thought it was a reasonable and viable deadline for you to hit. I know Judge Bustamante wants to see more progress. And you're going to have to provide another status report coming up. I think it's December 18th. So if we could make sure we send us a copy of that status report, it would be helpful, and just file it with our case, because that way we can see it. We can go find it if we have to, but it's easier if you just send it to us. And then the status conference is on the 19th with her. So, and I think, as I understand it, and we certainly, in my case, have not gone the next step of setting an OSC hearing, but I believe she's actually scheduled an OSC hearing for early in January. So I'm hoping I get that review so everybody out there who may not be up to speed on that can hear it. I'm going to ask Ms. Patak and others to give us more information, that update from what's happened since, because it's been a little time, and I know you're working on it. But I wanted folks to have a sense of where we're at. And for the folks who are here from representing the parents and the children, you may not have had quite as much information, though I'm certain many of you are attending those meetings with Judge Bustamante too. From my perspective, while there are so many important things going on for this little universe, this is the most important thing happening. And frankly, I think it's one of the more important things to happen really since DCS came into existence, when the legislature moved it from Child Protective Services to DCS and made some changes. This is now another step forward that was a long time coming, but I think it's an incredibly important one. I think it's going to, in the end, give that opportunity for parents and children to make sure their rights are protected. They have a full and fair opportunity to be heard. Same for DCS, and that at the end of it, we have a better process that we can be proud of. So I always come back to, I know that over the decades, there have been frustrations with Child Protective Services, now DCS. I worked at the legislature. Believe me, I heard plenty of them and sat in on many of those hearings. What we have is a sea change that I think is really going to make a difference, but it's not easy to work through a sea change. And it's not easy for people on either side of the sea change. So I appreciate all the work that's being done, but I think in a year, you're going to be able to look back and go, we made a huge difference for these folks. So with that, what I'm going to do is turn this over to Ms. Patak to give us the update. I had sent out an agenda. I believe well, before I do that, Ms. Judge Young, anything you would like to add, or Judge Starring, if you send an email, I'm happy to give you a word too.
Nothing to add from me, Judge Goss. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And Judge Starring, so you know, we can, go ahead and allow him to speak if he wants. So we can't promote you to a panelist, but we can allow you to speak, Judge Starring, working through the tech. So Judge Starring, if there's anything you wanted to add, and he may be trying to figure out how to make that work. It is showing muted. Yeah, it's muted. If you are trying to speak, Judge, you are muted right now. We'll come back and give you another shot, and if not. So I'm sorry, I should have given that opportunity first. Ms. Patak, if you will.
Hi, thank you, Judge. Good afternoon. An update from the department. So as far as the Maricopa County cases, we have reviewed all of them. We've done our internal review. We've sent 42 of them over to the Attorney General's office. We actually, in order to get it done, we had 3 people doing this full-time as their whole job. We pulled them off everything else that they're doing for the past 2 weeks. And then we've been giving 11 people up to 10 hours of overtime. So that they're done with their review. We have gotten a couple new cases. The good news is at least one of the new cases that we got, the field did the affidavit. So I feel like we're getting towards the end of having to do this complete review, because now we're starting to see, okay, the field is doing it before the trial and we're not having to redo it. But we have had a couple where we didn't, and so they've been able to do those. So after we finish those, we've 42 of them. So once we figure out which documents they are, then we have to pull the documents, which takes a minute too. We've added one person full-time. Their whole job is just doing that, so we can make sure we get everything pulled and sent this week. Currently 42 of them have been, this is just Maricopa County, 42 of them have been sent to the AG's office to do their secondary review. And then we've done about half of the emails. I have 2 computers going right now. You can't see one behind me, but we're having to pull them.
We should see it.
So build them into some sort of a packet and then redact them. But that's what I am working on right now. I think that's our whole update. If you have any questions, I can answer.
Well, and it could be Mr. Hinsey who's here, but the kind of the status of that, would he be the one to talk about where we're at and some of the tech that he's been working on, or would you?
Yeah, so I can just tell you as far as the reviews, what our status is, and then as far as the tech piece, I do think he has an update on that.
Okay. Let me ask Judge Young and Judge Starring. I know you said no comments, and I'm getting your emails with that. Anything that you wanted to ask or any thoughts?
Yeah, Ms. Patak, what about the other counties other than Maricopa? How are those cases coming along?
So those actually, I feel like, moved a little bit faster because they're doing the reviews themselves, so they're not relying on CRCU. I'm just going to look at Yavapai.
And I know the Yavapai ones because they're all.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Why don't you? I don't. So why don't you tell us? Can I hear Yavapai?
So I was going to say on Yavapai, the ones I'm looking at, and Andy, yeah, Andy's there. It looks like I've sent emails on one of them, and then we have 2, 3 that are outstanding. But
we've got 3 tomorrow, so
you have 3 tomorrow. Okay. Well, and I think you're just missing the emails. So what kind of the way I've been doing it is when the field or CRCU completes their review, so the documents are ready, then I'll prioritize that one as an email. So if you're ready with everything except for the emails, we can move that to the top of the list. The problem, if I'm being like very, very frank with everyone, is that when everything's on fire, then everything's on fire. So you literally cannot prioritize every single thing. So right now, I am prioritizing the cases that we have this order to show cause on. But if there's one that it's like, hey, everything's ready, we want to move this back, if you flag it for me, and the AGs have been really good at doing that, then I can move it to the front of the list. I have a couple people helping over here with redactions now, so that should be good. We'll just have to build the cases and then get it to them to redact.
Now, what about the counties other than Yavapai?
So I think, let me see. Andy, do you have a better update on that? I can't see on the spreadsheet. I can only see the stuff that I've done. It looks like La Paz is done. Sorry, I have these alphabetized. Mojave had quite a few, but it looks probably like about half of them. They maybe had 9. It looks like about half are done.
Are they
Yavapai.
appointing council now? Is Mojave appointing council now? Do you know?
Yes,
Andy,
they do.
yes.
They do? Okay.
So we have 5 Mojave County cases where we're only waiting for emails, and then we have 3 new cases. So those haven't been completed yet.
Yes, George.
My office is telling me they're trying to join on Teams, but no one's letting me.
It's Zoom, it's not Teams.
Okay. So
It's a Zoom. And they don't have to be let in.
Oh.
They can just get in if they have the meeting ID. Can we perhaps forward it over? To let her maybe respond, maybe they've got a bad link or a link from last week or something. I know I put the most current link in my agenda. I believe I got it right. I get nervous every time I do that. Do you know who it is, Judge Foster?
yeah, it's Maggie Williams. It's Maggie.Williams at Maricopa.
We'll hopefully get that solved for you.
Thank you.
Was there anything more that we were talking about on the rural counties, the other counties? We got some of them.
We have not finished the Yuma cases yet. So we're still working on the Yuma cases. I believe there's only a few, less than 5 Yuma cases.
I'm seeing four Yuma cases.
So in the universe outside of Maricopa County, we're looking at what, about 15 or 20 total?
I think there's a little over 20.
A little over 20, that range. And then the rest obviously are Maricopa County, and that was the numbers I was talking about, I believe, that Judge Bustamante. Are you folks, and it may be the AG, I don't know which one of you wants to talk about it, but are you in a position to be able to reach that December 16th? I know you're all working hard, and I appreciate that, but is it something you're expecting to be able to meet for Judge Bustamante?
So I'll say we can have all the documents to the AG's office, but I know that we're giving them a lot of work when we hand it to them. We were able to identify, Kirsten, it's like 9, I think, paralegals from a different division who's helping with the redaction. So that way, when we're giving it to them, it's not just the AG's having to do it. So we're giving overtime to, I think, 9 paralegals from their liability management section. They do our cases, like our civil lawsuits. So they're familiar with our stuff. They didn't need training when it comes to redaction. So they've been doing overtime on those. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's really been speeding it up once it gets over there.
Yes. I would think, and I know everybody's working hard, and unfortunately I'm in a situation of having to ask people sorry, I know you want to take this time of year off, but unfortunately we're not there, and having people have to come in on weekends myself. So I do appreciate that that's a big ask for staff. And if nothing else, please extend my appreciation for doing it. I know that they understand they're doing it for the families and them, but I do appreciate that this is a burden on them that isn't part of their regular day-to-day job. So I appreciate it. I extend that also, of course, to you folks. Please, as a personal one from me, let me extend that. So why don't we jump then over Mr. Hinsey, some updates on where you see your computer world.
Yes, so we are making good progress on the notes and people records associated with those notes. The exports we were able to get into a PDF, which is nice. Like, we weren't thinking you'd be able to get there, so that's a good thing for us. There were a few things we were able to add into the formatting of that disclosure document that I think will help people with the usability some other materials are listed. Every line has a number on it, so if you need to cite a specific place you cite that document, given that there's going to be hundreds of lines, you'll have a number for that line. So it should help you navigate that in conversations a little better. There's a snag that came up about a half hour ago that the team's working with Microsoft on some back-end technology talk stuff to make sure that we can do this live in our production environment. I will say we are at a point that there's no wiggle room in the schedule. So every issue that pops up becomes a risk of us missing January 1. But so far, every issue that has popped up, we've been able to resolve it very quickly, and we haven't had to push that deadline yet. So I'm not sure the full extent of this one yet. If it does cause any sort of delay past that, I'll make sure that we communicate that out to everybody to know what that delay is going to look like. But we're at the point the wind blows, it could cause problems.
No, and I get that, and any outage could be a challenge. You were also setting up the meetings, and I'm going to hear from the other folks here at the table on going through the additional documents, the additional data points. And that was a huge lift too. I mean, every one of these things, and I know I come back to this, everything is a huge lift. And we're trying to do it all at once now, as opposed to we could have done it over years, but we're here today. How is that going from your perspective? What progress were you able to make? And then I want to hear from the AG's office, and then of course from the other folks.
We had 2 meetings last week. So one was to show this first round of what that disclosure document was going to look like, some feedback, and then Friday was to start that conversation on going through most of the tables. Very introductory conversation. A lot of folks that are going to be seeing this. But we ran through what a table looks like, what the specialists see, what the output's going to be. And we have a series of meetings set every week to start just chopping away at that list.
And how long is that list ultimately did you come up with?
It's long. Yeah, it's just shy of 1,900 tables.
1,900.
But the core ones, there's really 400 tables.
And I get that, but
we have
they're all there, and you got to look at them all because you don't know, as Judge Foster is, you don't know what we don't know. And so you got to go through them all so that they do know. And how long do you think that process is going to take from your perspective on the going through the 1900?
It's hard to say. This first meeting, there was a lot of conversation about just the change and how much information is going to be overwhelming. I'd say we could probably estimate time after a few of these meetings to see how quick the team can get through absorbing this information. So
it's just a little too early to tell. But if they're happening on a weekly basis, then I know we're going to keep making progress, and that's what we need to. I'm going to go a little out of order with Judge Foster. Anything you want to add on that particular point, progress? Is there something that we could do to make it easier, better, faster?
I wasn't at the Friday meeting. I had a prior engagement. It's just said, so my folks attend my place. One of the concerns that was raised is, I guess, the dump is coming. And having to sit through all the stuff, whether it's relevant or not, I don't know. And once again, we don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
But that becomes very tedious. It's more than tedious. When you're trying to prepare for a trial and you've got, say, you get 300 or 400 or 500 documents, and 50 of them are relevant to what you're doing. You still got to look with everything. So being able to separate the wheat from the chaff is what we're anticipating. My understanding is that they'll have some better understanding of what we'll be getting. So, but I just wanted to make sure that you understood that that was our concern at this time.
And you can't get 500 documents and be ready for trial the next day. That's my experience. At least I'm not able to do this. Are these documents at least going to be word searchable, that kind of thing, so that it's, if you're looking for something in particular, it'll at least perhaps speed it up, though that can also be a challenge because one person uses one word, somebody else uses another. And so, and then once you get that, now, so that I understand, the document dump is going to be coming on active cases. So your folks are really going to get hit with that as far as what they need to get ready and get moving, as opposed to cases that are already on appeal, kind of thing. Is that right?
That's right.
So now, is that different in the borough counties from Maricopa?
So one of the, Pima County expressed some concerns about getting all of this and having to go through it, as opposed to CRCU going through things and redacting what needs to be redacted. So in the outerlying counties, those case managers or a case aide go through each of those documents, do their own redactions, and send them out. So I think the dumps won't be as large in those smaller counties because it's an individual realizing I already disclosed that, I don't need to redisclose it. I already disclosed that, I don't need to redisclose it. So they're handling their own cases. So I think the bigger sort of dump issue is a Maricopa County issue. CRCU will receive everything from a case manager and they can't pull out what hasn't been disclosed yet. I do think after that probably January time, extreme amount of documents that come out, we will be seeing a more consistent set of documents, and it will be sort of a one-time download of everything because the case managers have not been able to track every single thing up until this point in time. And once they do that initial disclosure of all the things that they're not 100% sure they've disclosed, they will be able to track it. So you won't get the duplicates like we're seeing now. You won't have a case manager that says, I think I did it on this date, but I might have missed these two things. I'm just going to redisclose everything. You'll end up having the ability for them to say, this has already gone out, this has already gone out. So I think there will be some significant growing pains for probably 30 to 60 days, maybe 90 days, where a lot of information will come out, but it should regulate itself so that it is a normal, hopefully within 10-day disclosure that's going out on a more consistent basis. So it might be very difficult for the defense bar initially. But I did also say, this is a really positive change. Everyone's getting what they need, and you're just going to have to work through it like we've all had to work through it to make sure that you are getting everything. So I just would ask for patience, and hopefully it isn't going to be right before a trial that they get the 500 pages, but it should catch up itself.
And you mentioned, because we have two urban counties, really, we have Maricopa and Pima County. I mean, Tucson's more than 1 million people. I think that counts as a urban population at this point. Why is that? Are the folks down there doing the disclosure differently? In what material way? Because it's still a fairly large population that we're dealing with.
I think caseloads are better. The numbers are lower in Pima County, and so the case managers have a smaller number of cases, so it's easier for them to do that. They've assigned a case aide in a lot of the units, and that case aide, that's all they do, is setting out disclosure. So it really is it's a numbers game. Maricopa County has significantly more cases. The caseloads are higher. There are probably a larger amount of self-referral agencies here than there are in any other part of the state. So there will be more of those sort of outer, it's not just going to be Teros every time. There are going to be a lot of other agencies that are providing documentation. So I think volume is the issue with Maricopa County, which is why CRC was set up, because the individual units couldn't stay on top of it.
I think it helps to understand why, and even when you're comparing an urban to an urban, why it might be different. And I do understand, I mean, just by leaps and bounds, Maricopa County has the vast majority of juvenile cases.
Can I add one thing to that too? I was going to say, we're concerned as well with that influx going to CRCU. So they're actually reorganizing right now. They're adding another manager position, and then we're going to hire on some temps. So I know it sounds easy to say just contract out, the redaction piece, but you have to train those people, and somebody still has to put the file together and send it out. So we're going to use temps, so that way we have an extra person to put the file together, And then we can give the temps kind of like the smaller, like 5-page, 10-page, like easier ones, while the people who have been working there for a long time are doing the ones that are like 5,000, 10,000 pages and just kind of go through the volume quickly. But I'm also, we're cognizant of the fact that we're dumping a ton of work also on CRCU. And so we want to make sure that that's not impacting the ongoing cases.
So from the parents and children, is there anything that can make this data dump? And that's the only way I think it's the best way to describe it, because that's what it's going to be. Easier, more functional, besides not having it happen and have been disclosed all along, which I can't go back and do. Is there anything that folks think might make this?
Well, that's the problem. I mean, like I said, it becomes stifling. Try to prepare for trial, you gotta go through this. And what you're going to see is people asking for continuances. They're going to be denied. It's going to be an appeal because we haven't been able to prepare our case. And, you're throttling courts where we have to do this. And from Chair I said, it's not my fault. It's none of our agencies. The state was very candid in saying, well, the system was designed for litigation. My response to that is, that's what this agency does. I don't know how you have a dependency without litigation. So why don't you have a file system that relative to that? So, we're glad that we're getting disclosures. But when you've got to sift through amount of stuff to try to figure out what is going on, it really drowns us and prevents us from doing this. And for our clients, for kids.
How are things going as far as, if an affidavit is filed, is the case pretty much moving forward to trial then without a continuance, depending on the judge is taking into account you just got it a week ago or 2 days ago?
Well, it's been kind of a mixed bag. At least in my office. I'm not sure about anybody else's office. We've had, Judge Bustamante had her last hearing she had. And I know I appeared. I know 2 of my lawyers did not appear because they didn't receive a reappointment. And so fortunately I was there, but at least in 2 of those cases, the documents seemed to indicate that there was an issue, real issue for asking for a new trial. Documents wouldn't have made it. Okay. So I don't know how often that's happened in that system. Probably a small percentage. But I'm sure you can appreciate, once again, the requirements of having the speedy trial. And I know it's that, but it's the same thing. Having the determination. Because the parents are asking us, well, why didn't we know this before? Why didn't we know this before? Because now that I see this, I've got this. So in terms of how do we fix it? We can't fix it. We can't fix it. We can just ask for more delay. It's the only thing we got. And we don't want to do it. We'd rather not do it.
Delay isn't on either person's side because so is the kids in the dependency. So I do get it. And the parents who are hanging in limbo and people who are thinking of adopting, everybody's hanging in limbo until the case is resolved. So I get it.
Seth was present at the hearing, so.
Yeah, I was present at the meetings last week. I do think it's good. I think I appreciate everything DCS is doing and the communication. It's just, most attorneys aren't super technologically savvy, especially when you're getting into public defense attorneys. That's, not a lot of people have civil litigation background and ESI and all those. And yeah, they can do Control F and the PDF. Most of them can, right? I'm not even going to say all. I'm just going to say.
Yeah, I'm going to say most of my judges can, I think.
Yeah, I did think someone in our office retired a few years ago who still was a fully committed typewriter, and his secretary retyped everything on Word because it's just, you became an attorney before, laptops were a thing, and that's just, he wasn't going to relearn. So there's some aspects that are going to be a struggle. It's been hard. I will say, I will echo Judge's comments about it. it depends on your trial judge. It is very different. It's very hard to give guidance to our teams, and I understand that judges are, individually weighing these out and making their decisions. It is hard for defense counsel because we can't have a uniform response, and so we are also in our small offices trying to reallocate resources on that. Where sometimes we get these notices filed saying everything's done, and either stay's going to be lifted in 2 days or the trial's in 2 days, and so that just puts our office in a scramble of like, hey, we're just dealing with these ones right here. Everything's going into that basket. And it is very different across the board. I will say in our office, I think on the appellate cases that we've had, about 8 of them now have received notices that they believe disclosure was complete. We filed 3 motions for set aside, which are now currently before the trial judges for adjudication, and we are preparing 1 more to file. So we're hitting about a 50% rate right now. I don't know if that will continue. We have, I think, about 20 more cases right now pending on appeal. Some of those are recently filed and did have the notices before, so maybe there won't be additional disclosure. We'll wait and see. But, at least in our judgment, we think about half of them would have gone differently. So, we are just doing it. We're working with it, trying to walk this balance of, our clients' interests, and also just understanding that we are all trying to work together to address this issue, which is hard. Because I think for our clients, as the judge said, a lot of them don't understand why we weren't here. They just want their kids back. I think also a lot of what we struggle with as parent rep, because I don't think anyone that represents parents has filed for sanctions yet, is for most parents, you just need more time, right, to engage in services. So on some regard, from a parent rep perspective, it's like, well, we don't want to file for sanctions. We don't want to hurry this up on an individual level because our clients will just give me more time. Although we realize that is not a reason to be pursuing it, but that's where it puts us in a difficult conversation with our clients at times. So, I think it's just been a little confusing for everyone, but, parents are showing up. You call into Judge Bustamante's status conferences, and I think she had instituted a new rule where she's only taking appearances from attorneys because otherwise we're spending 45 minutes on appearances. Parents and placements are showing up. So people are there. They are participating. These aren't just, ethereal cases of law. These are still real people really involved in it, trying to figure out what's going on.
Well, and I think and that's why we're going through this exercise in that sense. It's not an exercise, it's a real life process, because if you're filing in upwards of 50% at this point, and that may be high, it may be early, but that's a lot of people. And frankly, anybody is too many, but these people are taking a close look at it, and I'm glad people are engaged and showing up, because I think I was worried that parents wouldn't even figure out what was going on. They not know, and I suspect there are plenty of those, unfortunately, where we may not find them, but that they're there and engaged is critical. I'm certain for the lawyers it's a challenge, because that's another case on the caseload that was off the caseload, and there's only so many hours that each lawyer has to get to each case. Are you getting enough time to review the documents, I guess?
At this point, yes. We haven't hit anything where we can say we're feeling unjust on this end of it. I would say every judge has been there and been accommodating and understanding, and I do appreciate that. Obviously sometimes it's stressful because you don't know until it goes through, but we have been, and some of this goes towards too, and I think it is some of the way our rule is written, right? Because it is largely lifted from the civil disclosure rules, and it's just none of these offices were set up to do civil litigation with electronically stored information. We just weren't. We know what those practices look like. They have a lot more paralegal and para-support professionals, programs to assist with it that we just don't have access to. And that's what you run into. I had a trial attorney today who said, they're looking to go to a severance trial, and they haven't set a date yet because they know that there's 8,000 documents forthcoming from CRCU on the case. And so she hasn't seen 8,000 of these documents. She's like, I don't even know what I would begin to think or investigate or develop a defense on. And that is hard because that's one of hers. And, we try to keep our attorneys around 100 cases. So Obviously not all cases run into that.
A lot of 800,000 documents, and I don't think that's humanly possible unless you have a lot of years.
Right. And, we deal with an office where we have one legal secretary assigned to every 2 dependency attorneys. So it's not like there's a lot of support there. We have great law externs that come from ASU and U of A at times, but even they are there for a few weeks in the semester, 2 days a week, 4 hours each time they're there. And I get it, they're law students. It's just, our resources aren't there to handle this. And maybe that's just part of the discussion as we get through this, is what does this look like going forward? Because I think we do, as you've stated, Your Honor, and I do agree, we're dealing with families' lives. We want to reach the right decisions, and just, maybe there's a better way to focus this so that we can make sure we have the right information and right decisions going.
And the ESI is just part of the modern world, and even the smallest agencies out there dealing with people, that's what drives it. So I think everybody has got to figure out how to do it. But yeah, you've got an office, and the contract folks are one-person shops. A lot of times they're doing it all, and that how do you get through it? So I was wondering about how making sure they were word searchable and accessible in other ways, but then, how is it, and I'm on the AI steering committee for the Arizona Supreme Court, and how is it that possibly we could use AI, and it may be something that you folks need to start to look at more. There are different systems that are out there that provide confidentiality, critical, highly confidential information, but to perhaps take some of the amount of documentation that exists that always did. We just didn't know it was there. Even back in the days of pen and paper, there was stuff that wasn't getting out there because it was sitting on somebody's desk or a file folder and nobody knew it was there. They were tracking it. Now we can do a better job of identifying the data points. Now we got to figure out what we want to do with it. And so I don't envy you trying to figure that out, but it probably requires a convening all of its own in how to work through that data. And it's not a bad idea for both sides to sit down and be a part of that dialogue, because both sides are going to be trying to do it, because the AG has as much interest in sorting it out as the parents' attorneys and the children's attorneys.
But I think the thing that's hard is in a case where there are 8,000 documents. A lot of those might be relevant. A lot of those might not be relevant. But one thing that I've said is we don't want the social workers who are trained to be social workers determining what's relevant and what's not relevant. Everything needs to go out. So in those cases where there are those many documents, it is the lawyer's responsibility to go through, whether you're an AG or you're a parents' counsel. And something that might seem not relevant at the beginning can become extremely relevant at the end. And I've always used referrals as my example, that, as long as the referrals are going in, they don't become relevant. But as soon as someone says, hey, I've been waiting for this referral, the date of those referrals becomes very relevant to that parent and what the department is doing, and vice versa. If the parent's saying it didn't go in and it did, then the department needs to be able to show that. But on a daily basis, the referral itself isn't necessarily relevant. And we just don't know until we see how a case evolves as to whether or not 7,500 of those documents are relevant, or there might be 4. You just don't know. And so I think the volume piece is hard. It's hard to manage. And then I know all of you getting those documents, the AGs are getting them for the first time too, probably. So everyone in the system is having to go through these dumps of documentation. But we're really hoping that once this occurs and we get through that first 60 days, that it will be a normal routine type of disclosure, because the department has worked very hard to make it much easier for the case managers to get it out.
Well, and I think that's the point, is you folks are getting that data that you never had before.
Right.
And going, oh, what are we going to do with this, and how is this going to work? And it just occurred to me, it may be something that the bench and bar may be an opportune time this year to sit down that day and really try and work through some of that with everybody in the room, the judges, the parents' lawyers, the children's lawyers, the AAG, DCS, and really try and give that a focused, more of a town hall work group, as opposed to what it often is, which is a very valuable program. But I think that may be something that you folks want to look at.
Judge,
Yeah,
underlying all this is the fact that in my 16 years in private practice doing commercial litigation, I never had a client who just
I didn't either. I'm not going to say disagree.
I was going to say, you tell me one lawyer for that. No, it's just not. You know, my office, we have one legal staff. We don't have any paralegals. We have case managers, but they're not law trained in any sort of way. So when that dump comes in, the law trained person that's doing it is the lawyer assigned to the case. You know, lawyer assigned to the case to the extent that we're making the solution back the other way. That's what they do. You don't rely on the case manager to do it other than electronically send it. But to gather it and figure out, you know, we need to disclose this, we need to disclose that. Yeah, but that's on our plate. So, and I know the AG's office is entirely staffed, at least not this section, given the volume of documents that are there. But the AG's office, after all, is the largest law firm in the state. And so I'm not faulting anybody that's sitting here, but, you know, lawyers getting to put their heads together, like, well, how are we going to change all this? That's changing an entire culture, an entire set of rules, an entire set of expectations, where my judgment, they got to have a better allocation of legal resources. Yeah, everybody's got huge cases. Ours are 110 to 120. But we got to do it. And so every day I sit down and I say to my lawyers, how you doing? How you doing? And they're swamped. Yeah.
I would love for you to let the legislature know exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
And part of the reason, part of the frustration is the department still has to get, if the AG's office is in charge of disclosure, the department still has to get us the information. So all the changes that we're putting in place allow the department to get that information out easier. So if we were to make a change where the attorneys were responsible for the actual disclosure piece of it, we would have to hire probably, I would say, 30 to 40 additional staff members to be able to get this out. And we have had the same budget for years and years and years and can barely afford the people that we have. So it truly is an issue of finances and allocation of what our office would need to take this on. But the department still has to send it to us. So all of these procedures that we're putting in place are going to help the department, no matter who's actually responsible for the disclosure, be able to package it in a way that it can go and be redacted by whomever. Ms. Patak and I have had several conversations about what would be the best way to do that. Should we move something like CRCU into the Attorney General's office? And we're very open-minded to that. From a financial standpoint, it's truly impossible.
At this point, no, I understand that. And that's the challenge with this is, you know, and I agree with Judge Foster. One, I never had a client who was responsible for disclosure. They had to get me the documents. There were some that I did my own subpoena and got them independently, but ultimately the client has to provide them. What seemed to have happened is, you know, there was a disconnect between what's available and what the AG knew was available, and these disconnects, I'm not condoning them, but they aren't because of the group sitting here today that happened. But I do think, you know, this is an ongoing dialogue, and I think it's good to have this dialogue go on about how this is really going to work. And we're having this dialogue in a way that we have, you know, with everybody sitting at the table. And I think it's happening more at Superior Court too. So,
if I may,
yeah.
to your point on how do you make it easier in some other technologies, potentially
Yeah.
AI solutions, we are currently working with the Microsoft team that's developed some automated redaction software using AI to see if we can have that application do a first pass of redaction. What's fascinating about our circumstances is it seems like every corner we turn, we're bumping into a first, like no one's done this stuff before. So the current limitations of the Microsoft products that they offer around AI for redaction are pretty restrictive. So they would look at things like PII and redact all of it. So you would get no person's name, which is obviously not helpful in the scenario because you need the names of people, but you need the names of some people and not others. So that sort of conditional logic that requires context is what these AI tools are kind of built for. So we are working with Microsoft product group to try to see what they can do in that space to speed up that portion of it. That obviously comes with a price tag. So we are working with OSPB and the governor's office on what that would look like potentially, and proposing that. Obviously that relies on legislation and how things get through and split government at a time when funding is done. But we're trying.
It is, but if you're looking at that, or you're 50 staff people,
correct.
where you could have 10 staff people in the AI doing a first swipe, that can be very effective. And that's what it's really hard to figure out. You can't take the AI cannot replace the human factor completely. There still has to be judgment. As I like to explain it, there's this verb called sus, and AI cannot suss out anything. It is not capable of doing that. And that's what the human factor needs to weigh in. And so I can't help you with the budget. I was over there when the AG's office was on the chopping block with the financial crisis. I'm not, and was responsible for trying to make sure we had the money. I don't envy you that, but I do think having that dialogue makes sense, and looking at that technology to try and help make it work better, perhaps at some point, although I'm certain Mr. Foster, and why am I drawing a blank on your name now?
Mr. Draper.
Mr. Draper. You're sitting here going, yeah, we're never going to get that budget. But we can't do everything for free. And I will tell you, and sitting next to me is Patrick, our staff attorney. And believe me, he is pretty much a full-time work on the states, working on the dependencies, working on making sure we get everything moving ourselves. So it does take a lot to get that through. But I just we need to keep our foot on the gas on this one. We can't not get it done now. So I think it's really important. So as we're going along, and again, I think kind of like the idea that I'll talk to somebody about the bench and bar. I don't know who's organizing it this year.
Or the just juvenile. Usually Judge Bustamante does the Maricopa County.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm thinking of. And maybe talk to her about trying to see if we can at least dedicate some of the time to a discussion like this with more people than just 2 or 3. Who's great. My experience, and I did this with our self-representation materials, is when you bring in people who are doing different things and just have a dialogue, you can identify a lot of different things, and people have insight where people go, I never thought of that, and that would work. So see if we can't do that. Are there any, and you're going to provide me a report. What I'm going to do is ask, I know you have the report that you have to give to Judge Bustamante on the 16th.
Yes.
Okay. If you could provide us with a report, maybe 2 days later, I don't know what date is, the 18th or the 19th.
And Your Honor, can I get clarification, because we actually file individual notices in each case.
Oh,
So are you actually asking for a summary?
A summary.
As opposed to be
we'll
copied on every?
we'll be paying attention to Judge Bustamante, but if you could give us something that gets filed into our case, because I haven't held any hearings lately, and I'm trying to not have to do that. I don't want to set an OSC hearing on you.
And I appreciate that.
And Mr. Hinsey, that should, did you hear that word?
I did.
Yeah, okay. Those letters are important letters, and that January 1st is probably the thing that could trigger it and just have a more full-fledged conversation. So I'm hoping we don't have to do that. But yeah, if we could.
So would you like it after the hearing? That's the 12/19 is the hearing date. Would you
Yeah,
like
after that.
just a summary after the hearing?
Yeah, I don't want to have you folks trying to do a summary for us and do something, get it done, get it to Judge Bustamante. We'll listen in, but then if you could provide it to us. And then what I would like to do is, and we're in this part of December and headed into the end of the year. Would like to shortly after the first of the year get back in here and hear from Mr. Hinsey where everything stands. Given what I see teed up for Judge Bustamante, the most of this should be wrapping up in January. And now that doesn't fix, and I say most of this should be wrapping up in January. Certainly my cases should be starting to wrap up in January. I can still continue to hold meetings. I think I will because of everything that's going on, and not let go of that AO just yet. But the ongoing stuff is still a challenge for everybody in the room. And so we'll still want to have meetings and have that discussion and make sure that the folks are getting the resources they need. So what I was looking at, and let me just see. So we could look at something like January 7th. So the holiday is past, and what will have happened at that point then is, for the most part, the data dump. And Judge Foster, you're going to be able to, and Mr. Draper will give us a lot more insight into that at that point and where things really stand. And candidly, it sounds like what's literally going to happen is a data dump on both sides. The lawyers for the state are also going to be getting that same disclosure packet, possibly for the first time, trying to figure out what's in there too. So it's not the one, well, it doesn't feel good, Mr. Draper, Mr. Foster. At least you know that they're visiting, the pain is being visited on both sides, which may help in getting it to move forward the Superior Court in a sensible way. Because both sides can say, look, we've got 1,800 documents that we need to get through. We need another week or so. But that's what I'm hoping. And I'm hoping that we have accomplished what we want with your system, that it's up and running, and that I don't have to look at another hearing on the AO as opposed to the convening. Does that work for folks? Work for you, Judge Foster? Judge?
I'm checking my calendar.
Okay, take your time.
It is my birthday, so I expect a cake.
You be careful what you ask for, man. I sat on juvenile court. I had birthday cakes. I had presents for my kids. I baked cookies, as somebody in the room has had some of those cookies. So, all right, we need to make note. So, Judge Foster, is there a particular type of cake you like? Chocolate. Chocolate? Chocolate with chocolate icing?
There you go.
All right. We will not forget. Unfortunately, that means you're going to hear me sing that song. But you have invited it yourself. Well, do you mind being here on your birthday? Does that work? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not hearing anybody else say that it doesn't work, so I'm going to assume that that'll work for everybody. And obviously, some people can. As always, we are recording this. We'll post it.
And what time is it?
What's that? 1:30. Does this room work better if it's available?
This room is great.
How do you feel about it?
I'm fine with whatever. I can't reserve this room.
You can't reserve this room, and that's what we need to see if it's available next meeting. Lena's telling me, Lena, I know you're listening. Could you check and see if 329, 330 are available on January 7th at 1:30? Because I don't have the ability to look at the conference room, at least not that I know of. But Lena can check it. And I shouldn't say I don't have the ability. I don't know how to do it. It's probably in here someplace. Give Lena a moment. I'll get back. Okay.
Check one.
Yeah, is 119 available as a backup if we need it?
You know what? I didn't hear the date we were talking.
January 7th.
Sorry, thank you.
7th.
And then when you're over here, yes, there's another meeting that ends at that time. We can get this room set up. They can use something else. So we'll be here. I think this is a nicer room. It's easier to get to. It feels a little more comfortable, at least. I think people can hear better in this room. Unfortunately, that room is hard to hear, even with the microphone system. Here, we don't need the microphone system, so that's kind of nice. Is there anything else that we should be looking at or thinking about right now?
No, I think that the meetings with the stakeholders have been going really well. I definitely appreciate Mr. Draper's insight. He is very level-headed and comes up with the interesting solution. Frequently, we're like, oh, why didn't we think of that? So I appreciate everybody's input. It's been really helpful.
Good, and that's truthfully, that's why I say it's one person in the room has a thought, and you go, wow, and it's like computer programming back in the old days when you had cards. I know, you go, really, gosh, you had cards. You had to be careful before you ran it, because if you messed up, it could be 3 days waiting and having to do a whole lot more work. Today we just do this, and oh, that didn't work. Having someone in the room to think about it can really can make it go so much better. So, all right, so we're set for that. Ms. Patak, was there anything else that was on your mind or to think about? She may be deep into redaction land right now. Judge Foster, anything?
Nothing.
Great.
No.
All right. Patrick. By the way, this is Patrick. Again, I mentioned this, but he is our staff attorney who is really doing a phenomenal job keeping me up to speed on what's going and making sure that we have all of our cases moving forward. So I want to commend Patrick for doing that. And I know that our chief staff attorney is here, Steve. They're doing a lot of lifting too on our court. So I feel the pain too when I get this list of, Judge Goss, here are 15 orders for you to go through and approve and look at. And as he will tell you, I do edit them. I don't just rubber stamp. And so it does take a little bit of time on all of our part. So what I'm going to do is then we've got our meeting January 7th, 1:30 here. I wish everybody a good end of the year. And truly keep working. I know that your meetings are probably going to die off a little over this season, but I want to keep those weekly meetings happening because it's the only way we're going to get through this. You know, it's that old line, the only way out is through. And so you just have to keep digging that tunnel until you hit the other side. And once you hit it, we'll be there. I want to thank all of you personally because you're all working and doing about 30 years worth of work here in about 6 months. But that's sometimes what we get. We don't get to pick which one. But you folks are making a huge difference. So I just really want to express my appreciation, especially this time of year. The families that you're serving deserve this. And again, if we have cases where it needs to go back for another hearing, that tells us just how important this is. It's not just something minor. So have a good season, folks, and we'll see you in January.
Too.
Thank you. Thank you.